Integrated, not apart, rejuvenated, strong. Believe belong, calling it a movement. Oh, they're calling it a movement. Rejuvenated, strong. Believe belong.
Welcome everyone to a special heart-to-heart talk show. Let's welcome our host, Mrs. Nordia Tape from the Integrated Diaspora Services, and they will lead a discussion today on land matters with special host, attorney at law, Ms. Shade Byfield.
I choose
Everyone to a special heart-to-heart talk show.
because
Let's
they bring
welcome our host,
hearts
Mrs.
back.
Nordia Tape from the Integrated Diaspora Services.
The place I know, the place I go, my heart's back home. From the roots I grow, it's time to go. Truth coming from the heart, we get our strength from where we start. Integrated, not apart, rejuvenated, strong, believe belong. Every day we have to work hard. There's a pride, there's a job, so we must go on. Make use of the time at hand. Apply yourself the best we can. Ups and downs on the journey, we're a purpose called. There are wins and learnings. Compose to the turnings. Things will turn away, a desire burning. My heart's back home. The place I know, the place I go. My heart's back home. From the roots I grow, it's time to go. Truth from the heart, we gain our strength from where we start. Integrated, not apart, rejuvenated, strong. Believe belong, calling it a movement. Oh, they're calling it a movement. Rejuvenated, strong. Believe belong.
Can begin in a minute, please.
I choose ideas because they bring our hearts back home. Hearts back home. The place I know, the place I go. My heart's back home. From the roots I grow, it's time to go. Truth coming from the heart, we get our strength from where we start. Integrated, not apart, rejuvenated, strong, believe belong. Every day we have to work hard. There's a pride, there's a job, so we must go on. Make use of the time at hand. Apply yourself the best we can. Ups and downs on the journey, we're a purpose called. There are wins and learnings. Compose to the turnings. Things will turn away, a desire burning. My heart's back home. The place I know, the place I go. My heart's back home. From the roots I grow, it's time to go. Truth from the heart, we gain our strength from where we start. Integrated, not apart, rejuvenated, strong. Believe belong, calling it a movement. Oh, they're calling it a movement.
Good afternoon, good evening, good morning, everyone across the world, the diaspora, wherever you are. Thank you so much for joining us today for this wonderful session. our first session actually in what we call Diaspora Conversations, matters that concern you. And today we're off to a late start, as we had initially wanted, as stated on the flyer for this evening's discussions. But nonetheless, we're here, and we're here to speak a little bit on land and the Integrated Diaspora Services team. And we have Shade here with us, who'll be going through some of those issues that can become problematic without the proper guidance. Again, thank you wherever you are across the world. I know there are persons here online from the UK. You can send a wave. I don't know if there are other persons here from other countries, and I know there are persons who are viewing online, YouTube, wherever you are across the world. Thank you for joining us this afternoon, and we're happy to have you. It's the first of our series of Diaspora Conversations, so stay tuned. Today we're doing land matters. Tomorrow would be, you never know. And please, if you have suggestions on topics that you want us to explore, that may be, affecting or impactful to the Afro-Caribbean community, please let us know. You can email us at integrateddiasporaservices@gmail.com and send in your reviews as well as your suggestions. Again, thank you for joining us. Shade, Mrs. Byfield O'Connor.
Hi, everyone. Hope y'all
Hi.
hearing. Am I clear? Everything clear with me over here? Just checking. Let me see.
Thank you so much. I think. Right. So we're going to run into it. We're a little bit behind, so we're just going to run straight into our discussions. And if you have questions, you can put them in the chat. At the end, we'll go through them as best as we can. I'm going to turn over to Shade. Byfield Shade is a legal practitioner in Jamaica as well as in St. Lucia. And she's a taxation specialist, very versed in her field. And I am pleased to not just call her friend and partner in business, but pleased to know that she takes very good care of the diaspora 24/7. I'm so happy to be along this journey with her in this service industry. Shade, over to you.
Thank you, Nordia, and welcome everyone. We're happy to have you, and we apologize again for the late start. We had some technical difficulties, and we're happy to have persons here that are willing to stay and join us for our conversation today. Now, I want to give a little bit of a disclaimer before we start. So the information that we will present here is of a general nature and is not intended.
Oh, by the way, Shade.
Yes, you hear? Yes. Nordia, are you hearing me?
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you now.
I just wanted, before we really want to give big up to Heart and the president, CEO of Heart to Heart, Mr. Tyrell Moore,
Yes.
for being so instrumental in making this possible. Will be our partners on the journey. Diaspora Conversations. Tyrell, he's somewhere in the background handling technical matters, but thank you, Tyrell, and the team,
yes,
for making this possible, that we could go live again today and have these information presented to the diaspora. Thank you.
Yes, definitely. Right, as I was saying, in terms of the disclaimer, we want to ensure that to let persons know that the information that we will present here is of a general nature and is not intended to address any particular circumstance. Because if you want individual legal advice, you can contact us, but the information is of a general nature, and we understand that every circumstance is different, and you might have particular issues that are different from what we will discuss here. And if that is the case, we urge you to contact us that we can address your matter on an individual basis, okay? So over the past few months, we've been having a lot of clients who have matters relating to land. Either a family member would have passed on and either they left a will or not, and they want to know how they can transfer property into their individual names. We also have issues where persons have been maintaining properties for quite some time. They've been paying property taxes, and they realize that there's no title for the property. So persons want to know how they can get title for the property. So we want to discuss all those issues today and how we can address those, that you can have title for your property, or if you can transfer title from one individual to the other. Now, the first issue we want to discuss today is probating wills. Now, you have situations where persons may pass and they left a will and persons want to know how they can transfer property. Now, you have instances where in the will, it may speak to a particular property that the deceased person did not own. And I want to ensure that you understand that if a deceased person left a property in their will that they don't legally own, they cannot pass it on to you. So that's the first thing. Now in Jamaica, before you can transfer any property that somebody has legally left to you, you have to probate that will. And probating of will means it's a document that the court will grant to you, certifying that the will is valid and authorizing the executors to administer the estate of the deceased person, right? So an executor cannot administer an estate until the will has been probated, which is the legal process of giving effect to the will. So you have instances where at the death of a person, you have the executors read the will, and what they do sometimes is that they take up the title and pass it to the beneficiaries. However, that doesn't transfer ownership to the beneficiaries because you have to go through the legal process of validating the will. Now, what we do here at IDS, we ensure that before we even probate the will, we actually look at the will to ensure that it meets all the legal requirements, because you have sometimes you have a will, but it doesn't meet the legal requirements. And if it doesn't meet the legal requirements, it will not be accepted by the court and the probate will not be granted. For example, a will, in order for it to be valid, it has to be signed by the deceased person. It has to be witnessed by at least 2 persons, and it has to be dated. Now, all those things has to be in place before we can say the will is valid, and then we go and probate the will. That's the first thing. Once we review the will and we realize that it meets all the requirements, what we will do next is that we will prepare all the requisite documentation to apply for a grant of probate at the Supreme Court. Now, what we have to submit to apply for the grant of probate is the original will, and we have to submit the original death certificate to the court. Now, once you submit the original death certificate, the original death certificate will be provided to you after the process is complete, but the court will keep the original will, and what you'll get are copies. Now, the court keeps the original will because it becomes in the public domain. So if a beneficiary wants a copy, they can always apply to the court to get a copy of the will. Now, once we submit all those documents and we pay the requisite stamp duty fees, which are normally 5,000 Jamaican dollars, the court will examine all the documentation, and if they're satisfied, they will grant something that's called probate. It normally says grant of probate. After it's granted, the executors, we normally register the executors on the title as the registered executors or registered personal administrators of the estates, pay off any debts that are on the that are owed by the deceased person, and then we identify all the assets under the will, and then we begin to distribute the estates according to the will. Now, the timeline for probate can take up to 6 months, and that's depending on whether the client provides all the requisite information. So sometimes we find that the clients, they can't find the original will, or we'd have to do another application for the original death certificate, because we have to provide those things to the court in its original form. We can't provide copies of the death certificate. We have to provide the original and the original will. But it typically takes up to 6 months to be completed. And once completed, we move on to the next phase, which is to distribute the assets accordingly. So that's the probate process in a nutshell. Any questions around the probate process, or was that clear? Anything in the chat, Amish, as it relates to the probate process?
Not as yet.
Okay, so I'm taking it that the probate process is clear. It's pretty straightforward. Once the will is valid, we then go on to the probate phase, make the application, apply, get all the documentation, and then apply. That's a pretty straightforward process. Now, the second issue we face daily is persons who have a deceased family member, and what happens is that family member may die without leaving a will. The persons may want to know, how do I transfer property that my grandfather, my father, my mother may have left to me or promised to me by word of mouth without a will? How do I get that transferred to me? Now, in Jamaica, there are three ways in which a person can be registered on a title. It can be through joint tenancy, tenancy in common in equal shares, or tenancy in common in unequal shares. So those three are very important because it determines how property is transferred on the death of a registered owner of property. Now, the first one is joint tenancy. So it's very important that you look on the title to see how the property is owned, because for joint tenancy, if let's say, for example, both parents are registered on the title as a joint tenant, and the father died, but the mother is still alive. How joint tenants work is that the property, let's say the father had multiple children, the children can't claim any rights to the property, because how joint tenants work is that once a joint tenant dies, it automatically passes to the surviving joint tenant. So it would automatically pass to the mother because she's still alive and they're registered as joint tenant. So once the father passed, even though he has children and he might have said, okay, then I want to leave my share to you. Once he's registered on the property as a joint tenant, it doesn't pass to the children, it passes to the wife because she's on the title with the husband as a joint tenant. So all his share in the property will pass to her automatically. And what we will do once you contact us, what we will have to do now is to note the death of the father on the title, and it automatically pass to the mother. So the children can't benefit in that situation, right? You have what they call tenants in common. How tenants in common work is that both parties who are registered on the title as tenants in common will own the property either in equal shares or unequal shares. They can own the property 50-50, 60-40, 70-30, whatever it is. But how it works is that if one person dies, his share will form a part of his estate, which means that his share will be dealt with based on his will or the laws of intestacy. Intestacy is where there is no will. So for tenants in common, once a person dies on the property, on the title, it doesn't pass automatically to the other person. It forms a part of his estate, and it is distributed according to his will or to the law of intestacy. Now, it's important for persons to understand what laws of intestacy mean. Now, if you die without a will, what would happen is that once you contact us at IDS, we would apply for what is called a grant of administration, or what they call letters of administration. Now, before you can apply for letters of administration or a grant of administration, it goes in order of priority. So the children or the parents can't just apply for letters of administration. It goes in order of priority. So the first person who has priority to apply for the grant is the surviving spouse, which is the husband or the wife, or if it's a common law situation, if you have been living with the deceased person for 5 years or more as husband and wife, then you can apply. So the first person who can apply for the grant of administration in the estate of the deceased person is the surviving spouse. The second person that has priority is the children. So if there's no surviving spouse, then you look to the children. So the children, the second who can apply. If there's no surviving children, then what would happen is that the parents can apply, right? So it goes in order of priority. So surviving spouse, children, parents, that's how it works. If there's no surviving spouse, if there's no children, no parents, then it goes to the brothers and sisters of the same parents, half brothers and sisters, then you look to the grandparents, uncles and aunts, and if there is no one at all, then it goes to the government, right? So it's order of priority. So let's say a person dies, right? And the surviving spouse doesn't want to apply for a grant of administration to deal with the estate of the deceased person. What would happen is that the children, even though they're second in priority, they can apply for a grant of administration. However, they would have to seek the consent of the surviving spouse to apply. So what they would have to do is that they would draft documentation to say that the surviving spouse of the deceased person is giving us, the children of the deceased person, consent to apply for a grant of administration. So that's how that would work, right? If there's no surviving spouse, but let's children want to seek, give notice to say that, okay, then I'm applying for a grant of administration in the estate. Everybody's hearing me? I see something saying my internet. Everybody's hearing me? Checking my internet. Hello?
Yeah, you're breaking up.
Hearing
slightly,
you.
but
Hearing you.
Yeah.
We're
You hearing
hearing
me?
you, but
Okay,
you're breaking up a
great.
little.
Oh, sorry. Still breaking up?
No, you're better now.
Okay, great. So, because I saw something saying that internet unstable. Right. So if everybody's in the same class, so if all the children, let's say one sibling out of 10 wants to apply, all they would have to do is to give notice. So what we'll do is to draft a notice saying that Nordia Tape is applying for a grant of administration in the estate of her father, Louis Tape. And that's all they need. And then we'd apply for the grant of administration. And once the grant of administration is granted, what would happen is that we would register Nordia as the personal representative of the deceased person on the title. And then Nordia would have the authority to either transfer the property to herself, sell the property to somebody else, or whatever. But Nordia would be the legal representative who can do anything with the title. Now that's how that works. I see some other persons coming in. I just want to see if they understand this process when there's no will and you want to transfer land, just to check if everybody is clear or you need me to go over anything.
so far so good, sister.
So far, so good. Okay, great. So if anybody has any issues with a death in the family and you want to apply for, or you want to transfer a title and there was no will, then you know there's order of priority. And once we pass that hurdle, we apply for the grant of administration, we register the person who applied as the personal representative, and then that person who is registered as the personal representative can now transfer title to him or herself. That person can sell the property, do whatever they want to do because they're the legal representative who can do anything with the title. So that is in a nutshell how it works. And I just wanted to understand that whenever you are buying or buying property together with a spouse or children, you have to be able to know what type of ownership you want to register as, because the type of ownership will affect how you transfer property to your beneficiaries or persons who you want inherit after you pass. So if you register as a tenant in common, you know that it will pass to the person who you want to inherit based on your will or based on the order of priority if there's no will. If you register as a joint tenancy, then it doesn't pass to your beneficiaries, it passes to the other person who's registered on the title as a joint tenant. So it's very important from the outset that you tell us how you want to be registered on the title, because it does affect what you leave to your beneficiaries, right? So that's basically how it works. You have the probate. If there's a will, this is how it works for probate. If there's no will, this is how it works for, so if there's a will, grant of probate. If there's no will, we apply for a grant of administration. But each process, we have to submit the documents to the Supreme Court. And once you submit documents to the Supreme Court, both process takes the same time, can take up to 6 months to be completed. And the time is really dependent on when we get the information from you and receive the documents. Once we submit documents and we give you the grant of probate or the grant of administration, then we proceed to register you on the title so you can do whatever you want to do to the title because you are now the legal representative on the title, right?
Shade, we have a question.
Yes, you can read it for me, please.
All right, so someone is asking if 3 people are joint tenants on the title and one dies, must the deceased person's name be removed?
Okay, so what happens is that we'd have to note the death. So in Jamaica, how the title works is that it shows you what happens in the past. So it will show when you purchased the property, when it was transferred as joint tenant. And if one person dies, what you'd have to do now is to note that person's death on the title. And once that person's death is noted, then the title was passed to the other two remaining joint tenants. So all it is required is that you just note the death on the title, and it will say that this person has died on the 18th of May 2024, for example. A pretty simple process. So the next sorry. So what we've been getting a lot of questions on is unregistered land, right? So what we find is that persons have been maintaining land. What we find is that persons have been maintaining property, paid property taxes for quite some time. And what has been happening is that even though they maintain the land and been paying property taxes, what we find is that there's no title for the property, especially in rural areas. A lot of rural areas, there's no title for the property. And what we find is that persons have been coming to us to say, how can we get title for these properties? Now, there's a way in which you can apply for first registration for unregistered land. For example, and the persons who can apply are persons who, let's say you have purchased property, but when you purchased the property, all they gave you was a sales agreement and a receipt. There's no title to be passed. So what we find is that in the rural areas, you know, our grandparents or great-grandparents, when they were buying property, they didn't understand that you have to have a title. What they did was to get a receipt from the person to say that you purchased property. But the person who was selling the property doesn't even own the property because there's no title, right? So those persons can apply for first registration. If you acquire the property through a gift, and you have what they call a deed of gift, because some persons back in the old days, what they used to give was a deed of gift. Those persons can now apply for first registration for the property. Now, there's certain documentation that you'd have to provide to us in order for us to provide to make an application to register unregistered land. Sorry, give me a minute. Sorry, guys. Give me 1 minute, please. Okay, sorry about that. Sorry about that. I apologize. Right. So where I was, right. So in terms of unregistered land, so there are certain documentation that you'd have to provide to us so that we can apply for first registration, right? So you have to show us proof of ownership. As I said before, you know, receipts, deed of gift, you can have letters of administration, sales agreement, those kind of things that you can provide to us to show that, you know, your grandmother, great-grandmother had these documents, but there's no title for the property. You'd have to have up-to-date certificate of payment of property taxes to show that you have actually been paying property taxes for the property. You'd have to do a declaration to state that, you know, when you were in possession of property or maintaining property and for how long. And you have to have supporting declarations to corroborate your claim from at least 2 persons residing in that area who would have known the land for at least 30 years. You'd have to provide a pre-checked plan for us to know the boundaries of the property, an evaluation report, and we do provide that service here at IDS. An application form which we will draft for you and prepare for you and submit on your behalf. Also, there are fees that you have to pay to the land agent here in Jamaica for this application, which is normally up 1% of the value of the property, and a final fee of 0.5% of the value plus 7,000 Jamaican dollars. So that's what we need to apply for unregistered for first registration. If all documents are in order, it can take 3 months or less for this to be completed. However, you may need time to find all documents, and sometimes I might push it to say that, okay, it may take up to 8 months, because what I find is that most persons have issues with getting declarations from persons in the area because, you know, you are living overseas. So to find persons who have been living in the area for, let's say, 30 years or more, may be a little bit difficult. So I normally say that the timeline for this can take up to 8 months, because you have to get all that documentation to us so that we can make the application, and it may take some time. So I normally say I will give it about 8 months for everything to be completed. And once complete, what normally happens is that once you submit all the documentation, the land agency will issue, if everything is okay with the documentation, then they will do a provisional approval, and we'll advertise your application in the Gleaner, normally for 2 consecutive weeks. If there's no objection, the land agency will now issue title in your name. So you now have title for that property that you've been maintaining for some time. So for persons who have been maintaining properties in rural areas and you have these documentation, we can provide for title for the property for you, right? So that's in a nutshell how the process goes for registering unregistered land. Hopefully that one was clear. Any questions regarding unregistered land applications?
Teddy, what we'll do, we'll ask the questions at the end.
At the end?
Because
Okay.
there's some questions in the chat. So we'll
Okay,
ask them at
great.
the end, yeah.
Okay, great. So that's registered and unregistered land. So it is possible for you to get title for properties that you've been maintaining that has no title. So we can apply for first registration of property on your behalf, right? The next thing that we've been seeing is that persons who are living abroad, you know, they want to invest somewhat in their country. So they want to, you know, buy real estate and those kind of things. And persons may feel that buying real estate is, you know, an easy process, but in Jamaica it's really not. It can be a complicated process, and that's why you need an attorney. You know, you come over to IDS, and what we do is that we guide you from inception to the final stage, because what we do is that we make sure that when you're buying property, we examine the title to ensure that the title is free from any encumbrance. You know, if there's a mortgage on the property, you know, we ensure that the person who is selling discharge that mortgage, or give us an undertaking that they will discharge the mortgage. We ensure that there's no caveat, which is normally stop orders. You know, there's no legal action being taken on the property. We examine the title, ensure that the person who is selling the property has the legal right to sell. Okay, so we you know, examine those documents. We look at the water supply. We look at the water bills, ensure that they're up-to-date water payments, because what happens in Jamaica is that the water supply, it runs with the land, meaning whenever you buy a property, if you don't look at the previous water bill, what would happen is that you would now be responsible for paying that water bill that was in arrears for quite some time. So what we do is that we examine the water bills, ensure that it is free and clear and it's up to date and there's no back payments on it. You have to have a TRN, a tax registration number in Jamaica. So once you're buying property in Jamaica, you have to apply for a tax registration number, which we here at IDS assist with. We ask clients for up-to-date certificate of property tax payment, because the property cannot be transferred without property tax payments. We look at proof of identity to ensure that the person who they claim to say that is on the title, you know, we have proof that is in fact that person selling. So that's the process. Those are the documents that we collect to ensure that all goes well with the sale of property. We also prepare what they call an agreement for sale, and the agreement for sale will set out the conditions and terms of the sale of property. What that normally encompasses that you have to pay what they call a fee to prepare letters of possession, and those letters are what you would use to take to the Jamaica Public Service and the National Water Commission to give you water supply in your name on the property and electricity in your name on the property. So those are the things that would have to be prepared as well before title can, well, that's after title has passed. Once we prepare the agreement for sale and all parties have signed, what happens next is that you will be required to pay a deposit. Normally, a deposit is typically 5 to 10% of the value of the property or the sale price. So once you pay that deposit and we examine all the documentation and everything is in order, what would happen next is that we will submit what they call a transfer instrument to pass the property from the seller to the buyer. And that transfer instrument is assessed for transfer and stamp duties. Once the stamp duty and transfer taxes are paid, and transfer tax is only paid by the seller. So if you're buying property, you won't pay the transfer tax. It's only when you're selling that you'll pay the transfer tax, right? All you will pay is that you pay half cost for the stamp duty, which is 2,500 Jamaican dollars, and you will pay half cost for the registration fees, which is 0.25% of the value of the property. Once transfer taxes and stamp duties are paid, we submit that documentation now to the land agency, which typically takes around 5 to 7 working days for the transfer to take effect. And then what we'll do is that we will provide the title now being transferred in your name to you. We normally create the documents using DHL, FedEx, to our clients who are overseas. So that's a problem. Once you're buying property, we just FedEx. Once it's completed, we FedEx the title to you wherever you are. So you don't have to worry about how you will get your title. We will provide that to you. That's how it goes if you're buying property. If you're selling property now, if you have property here in Jamaica and you're selling, process is essentially the same, but if you're the seller, you have a little bit more responsibility because you're now be required to pay transfer tax. Some persons want to sell, but they can't find the title. If your title is lost, we will assist you in applying for what they call a lost title application. Some persons may want to sell and they're not the registered owners. You know, you may have a death in the family and the person who died, you want to sell their property. We would apply for, if it's a grant of probate, if there was a will, we'd apply for that so that you are now the legal representative, or we apply for a grant of administration so that you will be now in a legal position to sell that property. So that's how we operate here at IDS when it relates to the sale and transfer of property. That's how it works. It sounds straightforward when we're talking, but it can be a very complicated process, especially if there are certain issues with the title. Sometimes persons may have what they call stop orders on the property because somebody else is claiming a legal right. So what we'll do is that we will make an application to have that stop order removed so that you can now sell. Sometimes you may have a previous mortgage. We will write to the mortgage company to have that mortgage discharged. We normally give an undertaking to say that once the sale is complete, we will discharge the mortgage. So those are some of the things that we do, or some of the things that may be involved in the buying and selling of property, depending on what is registered on your property. Because some persons have different issues with property, and you know, each situation is different. So we take it as it comes and apply for what is required to have that property free and clear so that you can transfer a clean title. So that's how the sale and transfer typically goes for property in Jamaica. And the last thing that we'll talk about here is what they call squatters' rights in Jamaica, or in the legal term, adverse possession. Now, what is they call squatters' rights? It's persons who, without your consent, just come and take your property. Because persons are living overseas, you know, you might have property here in Jamaica that you have not been maintaining for quite some years, property here that you may not even remember that you have, or that you were the legal owner of, and persons, because they don't see anybody on the property, they just come in and they live on the property. Some persons even develop structures on the property and they live there. And the law is saying that, well, if you don't care about the property and this person has been living there for 12 years or more, undisturbed, without your consent, that person has a legal right to apply for title of your property, and that person will dispossess you of your land, even though you have already a title for that property, because this person has been living here for 12 years, paying taxes for at least 7 years, and can prove that, then that person can apply for a new title, and then your old title is no longer of any use. So it's very important for you to continue to check up on properties that you have in Jamaica to ensure that nobody's living there or nobody is taking possession in any way, shape, or form to your property. Because if they have been living there undisturbed because you're not here to disturb them, they don't have your consent, that person can apply for title in your property, right? So if that person has a fencing, they're cultivating the property and those kind of things, and they prove that they have been doing all these things, they provide declarations to the court that they've been living there for 12 years or more, maintaining the property, they show that they have been paying property taxes, they give them a surveyor's report, the application form, valuation report, and they pay the requisite fees, then they can apply for title, and then can't do anything about it because you haven't been here for that time to maintain that property, to show that you have an interest in the property. And the law in Jamaica is saying that, well, we don't want any property to go to waste. If this person is living here for that long, then they may as well be the owners. So that's how adverse possession works. However, if you can show that you have been trying to get this person off the property, you have the police involved, you make a police report, you try to get that person off, then that person application will not be successful, because you can show that it wasn't an undisturbed situation. It was actually disturbed because you were trying to get that person out. But you have to show some acts that you are trying to say that, okay, I am the legal owner, you are asserting your right. Because if you don't assert your right, then that person can dispossess you, once you make the application. And once the application is successful, then whatever title you had before is of no more use, right? So it's very important for you to check up on lands that you have in Jamaica. If you're the legal owner, if you've been maintaining it for quite some time, ensure that you can show some kind of proof that you have been doing something to show that, you are the legal owner and you are very interested. If there's somebody living on the property and you want to get them off, ensure that you go to the police, make a police report, have your attorneys, write to them to say that, we want you off the property, we're the legal owners, just to prove some type of acts that you are asserting yourself as the owner, because you don't want persons to go ahead, apply, and then take over your property, and then there's nothing you can do about it legally. And if you have somebody living there that wants title, the process can take up to a year for that person seeking title via squatters' rights to be successful. So that's how squatters' right works. Let's see. I think that was all we had for the presentation on land matters. So that would probate, land after family member dies, unregistered land. Right, I think that was it. So Amish or Nordi, any questions?
Yes, Shade, we have a few questions from the chat.
Okay.
So the first question is, does the probate procedure need to be completed in Jamaica, or can it be done in the UK where the person died?
It depends. So it can be, the probate process, it can be completed overseas if it's easier. And what you do is that then if you apply for probate, then you overseas, then what you do is that you make an application. If you have properties in Jamaica, you make the application in Jamaica to say that we already applied for probate. What we're doing in Jamaica is just to authorize it, or just to certify that you already applied for it, to make it have effect here. So that's what would happen here.
All right. The next question is, how do you note the death on the title? I believe this question was coming from the section of the presentation where there's more than one person on the title and one dies. So how do you note the death on the title?
So there's an application that we normally draft for the client to note the death, and what we ask client to provide is the original death certificate. So once you provide the original death certificate, what happens though is that you won't, once that certificate is provided to the land agency here in Jamaica, then don't normally give you back the original death certificate. You only get it back if you apply to the court. So once we note the death and we apply, we submit the original death certificate, you won't get back the original death certificate. They will keep it on file. So we normally encourage clients to have 2 original death certificates. So once we submit those documents to the land agency, and we stamp them, then what they would do, they would note the death on the title and we just give the title back to you. So it's a pretty simple process. We just made the application for you, submit the original death certificate, submit it to the land agency, and then they note the death on the title. Pretty simple process.
So, all right. Other question is, what happens if the person who owned the property has died? There is no spouse. However, the person residing in the property or on the property has been paying the taxes. Do they have a claim? I think that would be in your last section of the presentation, but for the
Just about
purpose of the
understand.
question, you could.
Man, that's fine. So I'm trying to understand. So there's no spouse. So the person who's living there, is it the children who wants to apply? Because there's order of priority. It doesn't matter who is living there. It's an order of priority. So if there's no spouse, then the children, if the deceased person has children, then they can apply for grant of administration. If only one child is interested in applying, then what would happen is that we will just give notices to the other persons that, hey, we're applying for a grant of administration, and then you will just apply. And I want to say this, paying taxes does not make the person a legal owner. It doesn't matter. So I think a lot of persons have the notion that once you're paying property taxes, you're not the owner. It doesn't work that way. You can be paying taxes, that doesn't mean anything. It just strengthens your case, but it doesn't make you the owner. So if you are interested and you apply for a grant of administration in the estate of the deceased person, and you are granted grant of administration, we register you on the title as a legal representative, and then you can transfer property as you please. The only thing that is required for transfer property is that you can get a certificate to prove that the taxes have been paid and up to date, but it doesn't matter who pays the taxes, you can still transfer the title once you have the grant of administration and you are now the personal representative of the deceased person.
All right. What happens if you live in a diaspora and you cannot get hold of the necessary information requested by yourself? Do you provide additional support to obtain information? I guess that's why we're here today.
Yes, we do. It depends on the information that you're requesting. So for example, if you don't have the death certificate of the person died in Jamaica, then we provide that service to you so you can apply. We can make an application for you on your behalf to get the death certificate. If there's a birth certificate that you need, we also do an application once a person was born in Jamaica. If there's a TRN that you need, a tax registration number, then we do the application in Jamaica for you as well. However, if there's other documentation that we can't provide if there was a will that you want access to, unless the will has been probated, we can't provide a will. You'd have to, we can't provide the will of the person. There's no way for us to get it unless it has been probated. Declarations and stuff like that you have, you would have to indicate to us who are the persons that have been living in the community for some time to get some declarations. And we may help if you have the contact information to reach out to them. But if there's anything other than, birth certificate, death certificate, probate documents and stuff, we wouldn't be able to assist with providing information because some information has to be directly from you. However, you have some cases where, persons have been paying taxes and they want to know if there's a title for the property. We do an application where we can apply to see if there's title, and we can provide a copy. If there's title, we can provide a copy of the title. So once you provide a copy of the title, if it is that the title was lost, we can do a lost title application for you to get back the original title. So those are some of the things that we can assist with.
All right. This next question, it was posted while you were speaking about squatters' rights, and I believe this one is aimed at if the property owner is paying property taxes. So question is, what if you have been paying property taxes?
The owner. So you'd have to show how long you have been paying it, because one of the requirements is that the person who is a squatter would have to prove that they have been paying taxes for at least 7 years. So if they can't prove that they have been paying for at least 7 years, then their application may not be successful. However, paying the taxes alone you have to do something more to show that you are asserting your right as the owner. So just paying taxes alone is not enough. You'd have to show that, you're doing some acts of possession to show that, you are the legal owner. You have to be, if you're claiming squatters' rights, you have to live in every 12 years or more. If you're the person who is the legal owner, you have to show that you have been trying to get this, you have been maintaining the property somewhat. You have been, cultivating, you have, doing some renovations or whatever it is on the property. You can't just say, I'm paying taxes, so therefore I'm the owner or I have more rights than you. No, paying taxes alone does not make you the legal owner of land. And I want persons to understand that, because we've been getting a lot of calls and persons been saying that, we've been paying the taxes and we want to get title, but paying taxes alone does not make you the owner of property. There's other things that comes into play depending on the situation. So if somebody dies, for argument's sake, and you have been paying taxes, that doesn't give you the right to apply for, let's say, grant of administration if you are not in the order of priority. If you're not the surviving spouse, the child, the parents, the brothers and sisters, if you don't fall in that category, then you can't apply for a grant of administration. But there's other avenues. So let's say, so the taxes, I just want to say that taxes alone does not make you the owner. There are other things that comes into play that we would have to assess based on your situation to see what's the best way for you to get title. But if you just come to us to say that I've been paying taxes, you can't get the title just on the basis of you paying taxes.
Thank you for that. The last question I'm seeing is, how do you contact the owner of a piece of land that you have found? All I have is the owner's name, but no contact details other than the empty plot of land.
So you contact, so that's a interesting question. So you contact the owners. It depends. If you have a copy of the title, I'm not sure how you know that he's the owner or not. If you have a copy of the title, we can do a search to see if that person is deceased. And we do assist with that at IDS. There are private investigators in Jamaica. So, you can hire a private investigator here in Jamaica for them to track down that person. That's something that you may want to look into if the person is not deceased. If you want to purchase property and you're not sure who the owner is, then you can hire a private investigator to track down that person to see, if that person is interested in selling the property or whatever. So that's how I will get around that, or to find that person.
So that's it from the chat so far. I don't know if anyone has any open mic questions that they'd like to ask now. Anyone with questions at this time, you can open your mic and ask freely. Marcia, she has raised her hand. Go ahead, Marcia.
Yes, good afternoon. I was so happy when I saw this. I'm just leaving a funeral, so I'm just joining. A question that I need to ask in terms of the length of time that it takes to get a brand new title in Jamaica. I have a family matter which the property was purchased going 15 years ago. So my uncle was told that the the title was being generated, but then he actually passed. The good thing is that he left a will which was probated and everything. So now the beneficiary is trapped with the whole process of obtaining the title. So went through the responsible ministry and so forth, backing and forth in titles office and back to the ministry. No, it has been a very frustrating process, one. And it seems as if when you look on the website and in terms of the standard for completion, we're told 6 months. Now we're hearing from the titles office, no, it's 9 months, and that's not reflected anywhere on their website. One, two, the submission that was made to the titles office, because we've been following up with both entities, we're told that there was some what you call some survey or some technical errors that were made, because when it goes from to various departments at the titles office, They do their detailed scrutinies and they may have issues and send back to the ministry to make corrections. That was done before, we were told. And we paid all the relevant legal fees that are required for this process upfront. And now we're told again that it was returned from the titles office back to the ministry because of the very same errors. No, the thing is the very laissez-faire type of attitude, primarily from the ministry's side. People at the titles office, they're really trying. But then it's like it is the norm for a title to take 20 years or so 15 is nothing. And that's the sort of attitude we're getting. How can a matter like this be sped up? Because it is holding up other processes and really is frustrating. I can't believe that in my own country it is taking so long to generate a title. I never had that experience. I don't know if when certain entities handle the process, it's more efficient than doing it yourself, because I tell them there's no way I'm going to drop any money under the table. So the legal process must work, and I need some advice on this, please.
And thank you so much for that. And I'm happy you raised that because unfortunately, you know, in Jamaica, and I think because we're a third world country and sometimes we fail to move with level of urgency, and I have that issue as well, dealing with the government agencies. But what we typically do in situations like this is that we typically write a legal letter to the various ministries to indicate to them that, you know, we've, you know, submitted all these documents, you know, we've provided everything that has been asked of us, and we are waiting, you know, on that information. And if not, we're going to take legal action. So we normally provide a letter of legal action, and typically it works. Once they see that persons are serious and that you are taking some kind of legal action, they typically speed up the process. So, you know, that's how we normally operate. Once something, you know, has been taken, you know, too long, when it shouldn't have been taken so long. So we normally, you know, write a letter of a notice to take legal action to the various ministries, and it typically works. If not, we physically go down to the ministries to check to see what is the issue. Because what I find is that sometimes when you call, you know, you speak to so many different persons and you get so many different answers, so many different things, you know, they don't know where this is, they can't find this, you know. So what we find is that if sometimes when you physically go down to the offices, you get a better response, you understand better, and you typically get the information that you need or the documents that you need. So sometimes if we write legal notice and it's getting nowhere, we normally send our associate down there to check to make sure whoever we speak to on the phone is actually doing what they say they're doing. And, you know, we speak to somebody in higher authority so that we can get the property or the title for the property, you know, in a timely manner. So that's what we do sometimes to get things done. We physically go down there to get the information, or we write a legal notice to say that we're going to take legal action if it's not provided within a certain time. So that's what we typically do. Hope that answers your question, Marcia.
Marcia, you have another question? Your hand is raised again.
Yes, my hand is raised again because I wanted to let our respondent know that the level of follow-up that we have at both entities are at the head of department. Let's say it's at a very high level. So I actually said to the minister that the next level will be to the minister, because this is really totally unacceptable. And on a point of principle, I don't think I should be paying more money for a service that I've already paid for. It's not a gratis service, and it's not a cheap service. So for me to pay legal fee again to get a letter to say hurry this up, that I think is an addition to the corruption. Why should I do that when I've legally paid for the service? It has something to do with the tardiness of the service delivery, which should change. And I'm saying even there should be some communication from the titles office too, especially given the said document has been submitted on more than one occasion.
Mm-hmm.
there shouldn't be a second and a third and having just going back and forth. How long will there be a third submission and another matter found and so on? Well, when will it end? So it is more than that. We can't just be plaster sealing, putting a plaster over these issues. It must be fixed at the root, and that is my concern.
Right. And that's something that we're working with, and Nordia can attest to that. We've had a recent situation, not at with Titus office, but with the company's office of Jamaica that deals with incorporations of companies. And what we find is that there's a bottleneck situation happening there where there's only one examiner in all of Jamaica. The only place that you can go to legally incorporate a company has only one examiner. So what you find is that, and it pains me to say this because I live in Jamaica, I'm raising a family here, I have businesses here. And what you find is that you are entrusting your business and your livelihood, with these agencies, and it's a situation where there's a bottleneck, where there's only one person operating in a space where it should be 20 persons, So unfortunately, we've had conversations, Nordic can attest to that, we've spoken to the head, try to have some matters expedited, but when it's expedited now, it bears pressure, unfortunately, on the one person who is doing all this work. And it has to do with, persons migrating. They probably can't find qualified persons. I'm not sure what's happening, but we do face that. And that's why, sometimes I myself have to physically go down there and pay extra money sometimes. And Nordia, we have dealt with this, I think, a week or two ago, where we have to pay extra money for something that shouldn't have been done, just to get something expedited. So I hear you, Marcia. We feel your pain. We are trying our hardest. We have been in talks with persons who are in charge of these ministries just to have these things be addressed, because these are some of the situations that affect persons coming back to Jamaica and doing business here. So we are trying our best to see how we can address those kind of situations. But I do feel the pain, and I myself go through that, sometimes.
All right, so this next question comes from Serena. When trying to prove ownership of a title and needing to show you have been living there for 12 months, is that consistent living for 12 months or more? For instance, you are paying taxes for 5 to 7 years, but stay sporadically due to being in the diaspora, and stays are limited. You're muted, Shade.
Oh, sorry. You said I'm thinking it's 12 years and not 12 months. And I think you're talking about squatters' rights, right? If it is that, so let's say you live there, but you travel back and forth. But if you can show that you are acts of possession or maintaining property, so even though you're back and forth, and you can show that, and persons can corroborate your evidence to say that you have been living here for 12 months or more, even though you're back and forth, and you can show acts of maintenance. So let's say you've renovated the property and you have receipts to show that you are renovating the property, then that is evidence to show that, you are, showing acts of possession. You can show receipts that you are, cultivating, maintaining, renovating. You have your declarations, and persons have, you have 2 declarations from somebody living there for 30 years who can corroborate your evidence. All that is compiled and submitted to strengthen your case, to show that these are acts of possession. You're living there for 12 years or more without consent, undisturbed, and then we can make the application on your behalf. So it's not just a one size fits all, or not just saying I've been paying taxes and living there. It's a compilation of things that you'd have to present to us. So you have to have those 2 declarations from somebody who has been living in the community, who have known the property for at least 30 years, who can show that even though you're back and forth, you are showing some acts of maintenance, some acts of possession, which makes you, I don't want to say legal owner yet, but the equitable owner of property, and it can apply for title. But there's other ways. So let's say you have been living there, going back and forth, but there's no title. Then you don't have to go the route of applying for squatters' rights, what you can apply for is first registration. So you can show that, I've been paying the taxes, I have declaration to show that, I have a deed of gift, I have a receipt that I've bought this property or something. And then what we apply for is first registration and not adverse possession. So it depends on the situation. And we will choose which way to apply for, because it may or may not be title for the property. And, if there's no title, then we just apply for first registration.
All right, so this question comes from John. To own a property in Jamaica, do you need a TRN number and to be a citizen or to gain citizenship?
You don't need to be a citizen, but you have to have a TRN, which we assist persons in getting. So we do provide a service at IDS where you can apply for a TRN, but you don't have to be a citizen. You can be a citizen anywhere in the world and own property locally once you have a tax registration number. That's all you need. You don't have to be a citizen here to own property here.
All right, Tashika, your hand is up. You can go ahead. Tashia? Okay, Tashia had her hand up, but I'm not hearing her.
If you want to sell mana, you need to stop and you need to listen.
I don't know if I unmute. Sorry, I was trying to unmute.
Yes, we're hearing you now. Go ahead.
Sorry, good night. I'm in London. Just a few questions.
Mm-hmm.
I brought up with my great grandparents. They now died about 27 years ago. I don't know if they had a title for the land because it was a family land, but the tax is still paying. How do people go about that? Because I would like to save, especially the piece that I grow up on.
Okay, so we can check for you if there's an actual title for the property. So once you provide us with a copy of the property tax receipt, there's something on the receipt called a valuation number, and we can use a valuation number on that receipt to check at the title's office to see if there's actually title for the property. If there's no title for the property, then we will advise that you apply for first registration. Of right, so that the property cannot be registered in your name.
Okay, yeah, that's good, because now I really would like to make it stay in the family because I grew up there. I've been there since I was 3 years old and I left when I was maybe about 25. So yeah.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Oh, thank you for that, because I know the taxes are paying and I just don't want to say too much about it because not a lot of people want to. It was a fight for the land, so.
Oh,
And no one wants to pay the taxes, but you know what I mean. You know what, Jamaica. And there's another thing too. My great uncle, he bought a piece of land and he died without the taxes, without the title, but the taxes is still paying. That I don't know how we would go about that, but we're still paying the taxes, but he didn't get the title when he died.
so does he have what they call a sales agreement to show that there was actually an agreement for him to purchase property?
It was bought by his uncle and his uncle died. And then after his uncle died, he had a struggle doing it. Yeah, so I don't know how
Were all the
that would
monies
work.
paid? Were all the monies paid to buy the
All the
property?
money's paid and everything, but it was struggle to get the taxi. He paid a lot of not the title. The tax is the title. He paid a lot of money through lawyer and then didn't get anywhere.
Okay. For that situation, I think what we will need, you'd have to provide additional information. So what we'd ask, if you're interested, you could just send us all the information that you have, all the correspondence with the attorneys that, were doing it before, the documentation that you have, you may have a, what do you call a sales agreement, you may have receipt of the, deposit that would have been made, anything that you have. To show that he was actually purchasing property or actually purchased property, then we would just use that to apply for the title now to be transferred. But because he's deceased, even if we have that documentation, we would have to administer his estate
Yeah.
And if he died without a will, then we'd
Yeah, he
have to
died without
do.
no will too.
So,
Yes.
so it's like the order of priority that we discussed. I'm not sure if you were here earlier,
Yeah,
but
I was listening.
if he had a surviving spouse, or if he
He
had,
had surviving spouse, he had surviving children.
so the surviving spouse and the children, and they can make an application for grant of administration in his estate, and then they know when they apply, with all the information that they have, apply for the title to be transferred, and they will be the legal representative on the title, and then they can transfer it now to themselves. But we have to administer his estate because he's no longer here.
Okay. The other thing with my great grandparents' land, because there were several brothers and the land was cut up. I know half of the children are just gone. No one is actually doing anything. Would me or anyone else had to contact the rest of the children before we sort the land out? Do
When
you
you
know
said cut up,
that?
it was the land, it was subdivided,
Yes.
and you have a copy of the subdivision plan.
No. That's why I said my great granddad died and no one had that. He was the only person that know how that worked.
Because sometimes it was in a rural area or in Kingston.
No, it was in a country.
Because sometimes when they say they cut up land,
Yeah.
they don't go through the legal process of actually
Process.
subdividing
Yes.
it. So what they do is say, okay, then over there is yours, over here is
Yes,
yours.
it's
So they can,
mine. Yes.
right? So they kind of just put a name say yours, but sometimes land itself is unregistered. There's no
Yes.
title. So if
Yeah.
there's no title, then what we'd have to go through is that either we apply for, is there somebody living at the property? No or no?
Yeah, there's someone living at the property and cleaning up the graveyard and stuff for me. So yes.
There's two things. So we can either apply for squatters' rights
Yeah.
to have title, or we can apply for first registration. But for
Okay.
the first registration, you'd have to prove, you'd have to show us a copy of a receipt that he would have bought the property some years ago if you have it, sales
Yeah.
agreement, deed of
Yeah.
gift. So it really depends, you know,
Okay.
what happens. So that's two ways you can apply for the title, if
Okay.
there is none.
Okay. Yeah, that's cool. And I had a piece for my great grandma, the title for my great grandma. I just don't have any for my great granddad, but I know about the taxes and everything that paid. So yeah.
Okay, great. Okay. So
Yeah.
those are some of the things you can do.
Oh, thank you. Very informative. My cousin actually sent me to this thing this afternoon, your Zoom call.
Appreciate
So actually, thanks for your information. Very
it.
informative tonight. Thank you.
And thank you for joining.
Thank you too.
All right. Our next question from Jacqueline. Do you help with opening bank accounts if you live in the diaspora?
Nordia, I think Nordia can help, but we do
Okay, I
assist.
see. Okay. that one almost like, huh? Land back. Okay. All right. But I know Shade probably has some more questions to answer, but let me answer this one quickly. At Integrated Diaspora Services, so we're a diaspora engagement business specialist, and we assist with everything that is legal, right, Shade? Our lawyers here know, so we have to be careful what we say. Right, so we assist with everything really on the island that is legal, from bank accounts to property related matters, and we facilitate them. So we work in connection with the different financial institutions to ensure that these needs are met. And the good thing about Integrated Diaspora Services, 24 hours basically, you don't have to physically be on the island to get these assistance. So all that Shade is explaining, realize she's not saying they need to take a flight and come to Jamaica. No, right. Majority of our customers, right, Shade, we have not yet met half of them in person.
Right.
They probably see us on a Zoom like this, and we talk to them on the phone, but we have not met half of them in person, and their needs are being met and they're comfortable. You know, so yes, we can facilitate the opening of the accounts. We can speak about this afterwards, and our contact numbers for all that Shade is speaking about, and our email address is also in the chat. So you can reach out to us for any of these matters, whether personal, as well as business. We will see how best we can assist you. And we don't just give you information, we actually help with the execution on the ground. I think that's enough for me. Back to Land Matters.
All right, so Serena posted a question again. She asking now, when purchasing property or land, along with a TRN, do you not need to have a Jamaican passport to open a bank account for such transactions?
Purchasing for property, no. Maybe for the mortgage process.
For the right.
For the mortgage process, you may need to show your passport for the mortgage, but for the land purchase, no.
Well,
If
asking
you
specifically a Jamaican passport, not just a
no,
passport.
No.
no.
Well, let me. I probably need to find out from the person though. Is it that
mortgage.
they are doing like getting a
Cash
title for
sale.
land, or is that you're purchasing a property or selling a property? Because if you're purchasing a property and you require a mortgage,
yes, a mortgage. You may need
they
that,
would
a
need.
mortgage.
You'd need some identification from you, which could be a driver's license, a Jamaican passport, or whatever passport wherever you live. And with regards to financing, IDS also facilitates through our brokerage partner financing for mortgages as well, right? So, but I don't want purchasing a property. So yes, through you
For
can
mortgage,
be
right.
qualified as a mortgage. So yes, you would eventually have to open an account, and you would need to worry about that again. Either we facilitate
she posted
the
to
process.
say purchasing a property.
Yes, I saw that. So yes, you would need a bank account, and yes, it doesn't have to be a Jamaican ID. And if you want to be pre-qualified for a mortgage, we can assist you with that. We have a one-stop shop property solution, which here is our the legal person will be handling the legal aspect of it. We can do the financing for you, as well as all the moving parts associated with getting this property in Jamaica. So give us a call or send us an email.
All right, I'm not seeing any updated
Happy to help you.
questions.
I want to make
else?
this clear. I want to make this clear, Nardia. The passport that you speak of, if you are getting a mortgage, then you'd need that. But in terms of a cash sale, so let's say you're buying a property, you know, you're not taking a mortgage, it's a cash sale, then all is required really. Yes, you don't have to have a Jamaican passport, but you definitely need a TRN. So you provide us with your identification and a TRN, and if it's a cash sale, that's all that you need. If it's not a cash sale, then as Nordia would have indicated, you know what I mean, to provide your passport. If it's a mortgage.
All right. Do we have any more questions?
I think Sandra sent something. Are you seeing it, or is it just to me? It says my dad had an agreement to purchase a house from this man, but never got to finalize it.
Directly.
My dad has made off for the house, but no, has my dad died, there's no paper for us. I'm trying to understand. You say your dad had an agreement to purchase, but was it ever, if it was not finalized, I'm assuming that the monies were not paid, the agreement was not signed, and the money was not paid for the transfer. If it is that your father had an agreement to purchase, but it was not finalized, meaning they never signed the agreement and there was no payment for the property, then you cannot claim anything on that basis. But if it was a case that your father signed the agreement, made the payment, and it was not transferred, then we'll be able to apply for registration for you for the property. But you know, if it was never finalized, there was no money being paid, then you know you wouldn't have any right to the property because it was not finalized. Hopefully, hope I get the facts correct.
Okay, all right. So Ashley is asking, does it matter what address is used for the TRN? No, for that, I can answer that quickly. No, it does not matter which address you use for the TRN because you don't have to be a born Jamaican to obtain a TRN here. So your address that you provide on your application from whichever country you are from, that is what it will be. So I hope that's clear. All right, I'm seeing a hand up from Jamaica
Um,
Association of Montreal.
Omish,
Go ahead, Nadia.
just to interject before you answer, ask that question, and Shade can reiterate on this, that as persons seek to pursue these activities, that they pay attention to the issue of their records, Shade. You can give your feedback on how these can be impediments when birth certificates can't be found, because those are documentation that may be required, death certificates, birth certificates, what do you call it now, names corresponding on wills. You know, you can probably shed some light on that and how important it is that while persons are doing their estate planning, that they pay attention to these things before death or before things like that occur. While they're in, everybody's okay. How these matters, which may be perceived as simple, can be major in these processes.
Yes, yeah, definitely. I mean, we've had situations where, you know, persons have, you know, especially in the olden days, you have on the birth certificate, you know, they may have, you know, the name spelled one way, on the death certificate is spelled another way, on the title it's spelled another way. So you have cases where on every documentation, the names are spelled differently. And what we normally do in a case like that, once we have all the documentation, we will just make a note on it on the applications. However, if it is that, you know, you don't have, so let's say you provide a title, the name is spelled one way, death certificate is spelled another way. What we ask for you to provide is the birth certificate to see what is the correct name that was registered at birth. You know, sometimes depending on where the person was born, we may or may not be able to assist with that application, you know, to locate the birth certificate. But typically, we can make a note of it, but you have situations where it is so inconsistent that we normally ask for other documentation to prove what's the actual name of the person. You know, so, you know, sometimes depending on the situation, that's why we made the disclaimer earlier to say that, you know, the information that we provide is of a general nature. So it's not a one size fits all. Each situation, you know, will be dealt with based on its own facts and circumstances, and it will deal with it individually. So depending on your situation, you may need to provide additional information. You know, we may need to do additional applications. So depending on how your situation is, we may have to see, you know, additional, you know, documentation, you know, for the application to be successful.
All right. Jamaica Association of Montreal.
Yes, good afternoon. So I have a question, and I think my name is Althea, by the way, from the Jamaica Association. And I think this question is for Nordia. As it in terms of payment process for any of the services, how are us in the diaspora able to make payments? I'm sure this will be, you know, vital, you know, question for other people on this platform.
Shade can help me as well, but for services, we have normally direct transfers to our accounts, or financial institutions in Jamaica, such as National Commercial Bank. And then we have a payment application that we use for our customers across the globe, which is safe, that we access through Lasco Financial Services, an established company in Jamaica. And that application is almost similar to like PayPal or one of those that is used across in the different spaces. We have direct transfer. For legal matters though, Mrs. Byfield will provide her account details to facilitate those legal transactions.
Right. Typically, we do bank transfers because, you know, in terms of, we don't do cash transactions. So we don't do the Western Union, that kind of thing. Typically, it's bank transfers that we use for payments.
Okay. I have another part of that question. Let's say, for example, we have a family member in Jamaica and we transfer money, whatever. Are those family members, like third-party family members, allowed to issue payments on our behalf? How does that work? Because I know there's some kind of legality. You just can't take money from hand to hand or transaction. Would they have to sign an affidavit or anything of sort?
So we don't do cash. So what we typically do in situations like this, we would ask you to notify us. So you'd write a letter to us stating that, you know, you are authorizing this person to make a
Affidavit, yeah.
payment, for, you know, on your behalf. And then we, you know, we'll say, okay. And then the person, you know, we provide our banking information to that person to facilitate the transfer. So that's how we typically operate in situations like that.
All right. Very good.
And we're
Thanks, Nadia.
mindful, Althea, we're mindful as well that the demography may dictate the type of payment option that we give our clients. So not everybody we know may be computer savvy and stuff like that. We may have to draw on the assistance of associations in Montreal, Jamaican Association in Montreal, to assist with, you know, the elderly or, you know, the less technical persons to facilitate these transactions. Because as you know, IDS, we don't work in isolation. We're very community driven. And we try to work with the associations and you know, so on to make things as seamless as possible for clients overseas.
And as a question over to you, Nordia, you do diaspora also in the UK, right? I think you go there, you know, sometimes throughout the years in the States, if I'm right.
Nordia, we're not hearing you.
I believe Nordia is saying, but
Not seeing her.
yes,
But yes, she do.
yeah, IDS we do tours throughout each calendar year. Those information will be posted.
And in cold Montreal.
Oh, she's here. She's here.
Okay.
Did you hear my question, Nordia?
I think she's having some technical difficulties, but answering on her behalf.
Yeah, in
I'm
terms
saying
of
yes.
Europe as well, in the UK, because I know the service is well needed. And I know there is another team over there, but it's on a different entity side. And so a lot of people, because I went there a couple of years ago, and there's a lot of people they're like stuck and just laissez-faire, just, you know, have these lands, but don't know how to go about processing at home. And so this is one of the reasons why I brought my cousin, you know, to listen, because she has been asking me, and I did, you know, talk to a few of her diaspora. So just want them to know that there is live agents, live services that goes on all across the world to service people with these line and these they're entitled to, or whatever additional service. Is just that sometimes we just like, oh, I can't be bothered. But if you're entitled, a land is equivalent to gold. So we don't give away gold unless we're giving a Valentine's gift, or, you know, with gold. But, you know, as we know what land is about right now, real estate is booming. So, you know, and everybody needs to run out of here, out of the cold. Woo.
Thank you for that. Thank you for that. But can you hear me, everybody?
Yes, so I can hear you, Nadia.
Right. So really to reiterate that, yes, I think Omish had answered, but just to reiterate, yes, we are a company that facilitates we form a bridge between the homeland and the diaspora, wherever they are across the world. And today we're presenting on Jamaica, but we also assist other Caribbean nationals, as well as touch parts of the it's the Afro-Caribbean community, really. And we do this to ensure that we understand the nuances, especially when you've been away from Jamaica or the Caribbean for a very long time. A lot has changed. It's also, we will also not ignore the trust issues that exist. Persons can't trust people. They send their monies. It is said that it's going to do X or Y. They have lawyers who they say have given their monies to, and they cannot hear anything from them. So we understand the pain points, we understand the challenges, we understand the trauma that some of you have experienced that has discouraged you from doing business in Jamaica or in the Caribbean. But we have been at this day in, day out, hard to ensure that you're heard, and that you have somewhere or some people that you can trust, So yes, Althea, year in day out, I'm asked if I actually live in Jamaica. Yes, I do. But in order to serve you all better, I spend a lot of time in a lot of the spaces where you are, so you can understand that we're serious about you. We're serious about you, and we're serious about your needs being met. Right? It's not love, I don't love my warm Jamaica, but to ensure that you understand we take you and your needs serious, we leave the heat and come to your cold place to hear those needs and also see that your matters are handled. I soon catch her there with me. So she can Any further questions?
Yes. Does having a name change by default pose any issues when applying for your TRN, bank accounts, or passports?
Does having a name, so whatever you're doing, can anybody hear me? So whatever once you have done a deed poll, yes, if that record is not amended in Jamaica, then your name, there will be a discrepancy as to who you currently are and who you were before you left the island. So it's important that you update your records in your place of birth with any update, any name amendments you've done, because that will mitigate against any further issues. Should you do land transfers, if you're going to do a passport, if you're going to do TRN, any record matter, as well as if your children or your grandchildren will access citizenship through you. If you got married or any name change, ensure that your records in Jamaica, for example, is updated and all our records correspond.
We're already having some technical issues.
All right, in answering the question in a nutshell,
You are
so
the same dates you are in.
Is she
Go ahead,
back?
Amish. Go ahead, Amish. I
Okay,
think
so
he's muted.
once you have done any amendments to your name, all those records, as Nordia started a beginning saying that it must be corroborated with what you originally was born with, right? So if you have done a deed poll, all that documentation must be submitted in answering, in purchasing or taking out a TR in your passport, everything. So it is not a case where you can do a deed poll and then you don't have that documentation to prove. Or else what will happen is that whatever you were born with here in Jamaica, that is what all business transaction will see you for. So you must also ensure that your records are up to date and in order to proceed with any business transactions. All right, there's another question. What are the steps in buying a house to take when buying a house?
Well, if you're purchasing land property in Jamaica, the first step is for you to identify the house or the land that you like. We do provide realtor services. So if you need at any time to identify any property, we do assist with that. Once you have identified the property and you show proof of funds, then if you're using us as your legal representative, then what we'll do is that we'll send you our information and they will send to us what they call a sales agreement, an agreement for sale. We will go through the agreement for sale with you so you know the terms and conditions of the sale. It typically asks for you to pay a deposit on signing the agreement. So once you pay the deposit, which is typically 5 to 10%, once you pay the deposit to the seller, what happens is that you definitely need a TRN, as we indicated earlier, and your identification. But once you pay the deposit and you sign, if it's a cash sale, it should take up to a month to close. Sometimes it depends on how the land is, because sometimes the land has a mortgage on it and they have to discharge the mortgage, which may take additional time. But if the title is free and easy to transfer, there's no encumbrance on the title, it can take a month. If it's a cash sale, if it's a mortgage, it can take 3 months or more. Once everything is is completed, then the land is transferred, you pay your stamp duties, legal fees, land is transferred, and what they will provide to you is letters of possession, and those letters now will allow you to be able to get water supply in your name and electricity in your name. So that's how it typically works. And also you update the tax roll so that it will move from the seller into your name. That's typically how it works in Jamaica. You identify the land, you sign a sales agreement, pay a deposit, the property, the transfer instrument is assessed, the seller pay transfer tax, stamp duties are paid, registration fees are paid, land is transferred, you get letters of possession, you can, now take the letters of possession to the bank, no, to the water commission, and then to Jamaica Public Service to get water and electricity. That's typically it. But depending on how the land is, it can take a month or more, depending on if you're going a cash sale, mortgage, if there's any encumbrance that needs to be cleared, that may impact the length of time.
And can you hear me?
Yes.
I was just gonna say, adding Shade, and at IDS, which I think Shade has reiterated, that we offer one-stop shop property solutions. So all the moving parts that you need to access property in Jamaica, from financing, realtor, legal support, valuator, surveyor, all the moving parts, the TRN, we provide. So you don't have to go anywhere for anything else or scratch your head too hard. It's right here.
All right, I know others may have more questions to come. I know the presentation has been very informative. However, based on our time allotted, we are scheduled to end at 5. So I have posted.
Amish, can we take that last one, please, Miss Plummer, from the Heart to Heart family? Thank you, please.
Okay.
All right.
All right. Before Miss Plummer goes, I'm just gonna, if you check the chat, our email address and our contact number is also in the chat. So for persons with additional questions, more questions, please feel free to reach out to us. Send us the email, your contact information, and we will reach out to you and respond accordingly. Miss Plummer, you can go ahead now.
Hi, good evening, everyone. And Sir Terrell, thank you for taking my question. So I was married for 19 years. However, my husband had gotten a property, an inheritance, right? Both of us have built together. And after 19 years, we have gotten a divorce. I have a document that speak about marital settlement, and he is now married. I'm not sure his wife know of the property because he's overseas. However, I am living at the property with our children. I need to know if there is any hope, because I'm told that the property is not in my name. He can come and do whatever he wants. And no, by law, it says we're supposed to split 50-50. Maybe he's not going to want to sell it. However, I did went to the land agency, and when I showed them the marital settlement, they said that I am not the owner of it, and he's not able to move me because 50-50. What if I need this land in my name? I believe they had given me a paper to say that he would have to sign over a deed of gift. I mentioned it to him, but I don't think he's going to do that. How do I proceed from here to assure myself that he will not take me out of that house? What advice do you have to give?
Okay, that's something I think we need to talk off here, but so how it works in Jamaica, there's something called the Property Rights of Spouses Act.
Yeah.
And what they say is 50-50 is really the family home. So
Okay.
first you'd have to establish if the home is a family home. Typically, and I say typically because, you know, there's exception to every rule, but typically, there's an exception to the 50-50 rule whereby if you acquire the property before marriage, or if the marriage was for a short duration, in your case, it was not, or if it was a gift, if the property was inherited, then, you know, sometimes depending on other circumstances, they may say that you cannot get 50-50. You are now divorced. So I'm not sure if that takes out of the family home situation because you're now divorced, living with the children at the home. But that's something that I think we probably need to talk to off air because there may be some other situations where we can
Yes.
look at to see how you can benefit in some way, shape, or form. You know, you said that you would have built the property, built the house on the property along with your husband, you know, with your ex-husband, if you can, you know, have receipts to show or something. Sometimes in the cases, what happens is like a buyout where, you know, because you both would have expended money on the property, you know, you can do something where you reimburse the person reimburse you for whatever you have spent. You know, you have different cases, but I think that's something that we have to talk about off air to see exactly, you know, what's the best solution for your matter.
I had text in the chat earlier to find out if I wanted to speak to you on the matter, the numbers that were posted, if I'm able to get to you directly
Once you contact
on them.
what the emails, right? So once you send an email, we will get it. I will get it. Trust me. Once
Okay.
you call the numbers or you email, I will definitely get it.
Okay.
You will
All
come
right.
to me.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Amish?
All right, everyone. So I think this is where we will end. Most conversations can be continued as I indicated before. Using our contact details, we're here to assist and to provide the information that you require. So we thank you so much for joining us today. And remember, this is a first part of a series that we have to come. So look out for us. Continue to follow our channels, our YouTube channels, or Facebook or Instagram or Twitter. Those were posted as well in the chat. So we will keep you updated as we go along. Nordia?
I think you've done an awesome job. So I would like to say thank you again to our awesome presenter, Mrs. Shade Byfield O'Connor, to my co-host Amish Henry, and for Sir Tyrell Morgan, from heart to heart. Thank you so much for making this a possibility this evening. We thought it would not have happened, but thank you so much for jumping in and making this happen. And everyone, thank you again for coming out, for staying up. Those who are in the UK and wherever you are, thank you for staying up for this informative session. And as Omi said, this is just the first of many to come. By the end of this year, you should all be able to do your own presentations and show more than, most importantly, flash your titles that you're now sorted out and ready to go. So we're looking forward to hearing from you. And hint, hint, those who are part of this session, you will be incentivized for being a part of the session should you reach out to us for some of these services. Thank you.